we see it? Do we see it? Episodes 1 and 2, Legendary Return of the Golden Witch. Wonder what that is. It is morning on Rokkenjima. The Golden Witch extends her impatient, heartfelt greetings. The seat opposite her feels like home. Another failed observer combs a shore of shipwrecked hearts, too selfish to measure their depth from the shadows. I just need to get a little closer. May Poirot guide my order and method. May Bronstein keep an eye on the clock. It's dark. Where am I again? I was playing a mystery game with my friends, and then... There's a reason I came down this way. I'm sure of it. Oh, I should probably introduce myself before I get into all of that, shouldn't I? My name is... Well, I guess it doesn't matter. I'm just another reader, like you. Before this, my friends and I were actually reading a story out loud in public. More and more people started showing up every week, even people who'd read it before. We were really shocked. That's kind of ridiculous to say, isn't it? It's like dancing on the street and then getting all shy when people stop to watch. Let me put it another way. Have you ever felt like your friends are just a bunch of people you tricked into thinking you're a good person? Being on stage feels the same sometimes. Like some sort of a backwards deception. Like I'm distracting everyone from realizing I'm boring by doing everything in my power to pretend that I'm not. Functionally, the negatives cancel each other out. I am a good person. I am not boring. But the only way to get my brain to accept a positive is by feeding it a double negative instead. I guess that's kind of a backwards deception too, isn't it? Wanting attention is a natural part of being human, I think. But we're also taught that such desires are shameful. So, we grow up telling ourselves we don't deserve the space we so desperately wish to occupy in other people's minds. I don't think I'll ever be able to fully express my gratitude to those of you who hold me in your minds. But I can try. And I can start by putting on a good show. To repay the precious time people have given me, with interest. This is a story of a woman I saw dancing in the street. I think it went something like this. I didn't play a lot of video games growing up, so I guess you could call me a late bloomer. Within the past few years, I found myself drawn to puzzle mystery adventures most of all. I've linked books across the ages, drawn blueprints for hundreds of estates, reconstructed deaths on a ghost ship at sea, discovered the truth of the Golden Rule, and watched the stars go out. Once, I even solved a string of murders using a misplaced chair no other player had ever noticed before, halfway through the adventure. But, that's another story. A theme I've noticed enjoying the most is one of loneliness given meaning. You step into the shoes of someone burdened with solving some great unknown, and the tools that make them uniquely suitable for the job end up the cause of their isolation. There's a similar loneliness here, too. I can feel it. I should tell you that my goal isn't to solve the mystery. As the chair I've taken this time is less than halfway through my journey, it would be presumptuous to assume I have all the pieces needed to press my attack on the board. A reader who does not adjust their interpretation based on new evidence is a poor one. The only thing more deplorable than a reader who makes little attempt to move with the story is one who feigns ignorance in order to steal the valor of deduction. The job of an author is to draw ley lines for an audience to follow, a journey along narrative meridians. When these through lines are unnecessarily broken, it can lead to the reader's expectations being betrayed. But otherwise, whether or not the reader is entertained by the journey itself is of little consequence. The pact the reader makes is only to embark. I traverse these meridians as a hapless cartographer, my charts of through lines strung up with pins and red strings, filled only with evidence I've gathered throughout the course of my journey. I bear these charts to you now, ready for my theorized paths to be redrawn by the tempo of the story's next heartbeat. That is the true joy of mystery. There are a couple of things I'd like to go over before we begin. Nothing serious, just some housekeeping to ensure we're all on the same page. I've been speaking as though I've been alone on this adventure, and nothing could be further from the truth. None of this would be possible without my friends and our constant discussions, even the ones that freeze our readings to indefinite standstills. Several of their theories have been folded into my current view of this world. Without their joy, we would not have drawn in the gracious audience rejoining us every week. And without that audience, and their incredible assistance and encouragement throughout, I would not be here with you now. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Earlier I mentioned I've only started playing more video games within the last few years. Well, you should also know that I'm not a very well-read person. This investigation will involve drawing parallels to things I've experienced in games and other media. If I cite an idea used in a game that the game actually borrowed from some classic piece of literature, I do not mean to credit the game for coming up with the idea. I have simply never read the book. It's best to imagine me as the person who just got into video games, eagerly pointing to something that's existed elsewhere for ages and saying, "This is just like my video game." This will probably happen a lot, so it's easier to ask forgiveness in advance. To further the previous point, this analysis contains spoilers for the following: Lumion Echo episodes 1, 2, 3, up to early episode 3, Reverse 1999, Patch 3.6, The First and Last Principles, Outer Wilds 2019, and the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe Edition, skip button ending. I do not fear drawing incorrect conclusions. What I do fear, however, is oversight or misinterpretation of objective fact. If I ever had a specific query, trusted veterans of this mystery kindly volunteered to collaborate and debate amongst themselves, crafting a singular red truth to offer in unanimous response. And thus, the Red Truth Council was born. Access to such power is not something I intend to take lightly. Our Red Truths are not to be abused to confirm or deny theories outright. They exist to prevent me from wasting time weaving intricacies upon looms of inaccurate premises. So far, I've put forth 5 repetition requests to the Council. My inquiries and their responses will be shown in full as they become relevant. I think that about covers it. Let me introduce you to the pieces on the board. On October 4th and 5th, 1986, a series of murders takes place on Rokkenjima, a privately owned island in Japan cut off from the outside world by an ill-timed typhoon. The victims are various members of the wealthy Ushiramiya family and their servants. Ushiramiya Kinzo is the reclusive head of the family who lives full-time in the Rokkenjima mansion and refuses to leave his study. The tendrils of his abuse and greed are weaved inseparably into the lives of his kin. His recent diagnosis only gives him a few months to live. Kraus, Ava, Rudolph, and Rosa are Kinzo's children. Their individual families have gathered on the island to attend the annual Ushiramiya family conference. As Kinzo lumbers to death's door, they're all very worried about the state of their inheritance after he passes. Coincidentally, each one of them also finds themselves in need of a lot of money right now. Kraus, Kinzo's eldest, has a wife, Natsuhi, and a daughter, Jessica. They are the only other family members who live on the island full-time, in the same mansion as Kinzo. As Jessica's eventual husband will inherit the head of the household, Kraus and Natsuhi are strict with Jessica. They have both tried to raise her from birth into being the aristocratic ideal of a future wife. Because of this, Jessica is in a rebellious phase, adopting attitudes and speech patterns her parents find improper. Ava, the second eldest of Kinzo's children, has a husband, Hideyoshi, and a son, George. Ava's grand plan is to have George chosen as the next head of the family instead of Jessica's future husband. Hideyoshi, a laid-back businessman, took on the Ushiromiya family name to help further Ava's goals. They have both raised him from birth into being the aristocratic ideal of a future family head. Compared to Jessica, George is a model successor. Rudolph... Don't mind that guy, he just doesn't like planes much. Rudolph, Kinzo's third child, has a wife, Kyrie, and a son, Battler. Kyrie is Rudolph's second wife, while Battler is the son of Rudolph's first marriage. Rudolph and Kyrie also have a daughter, Battler's sister, Anji, who was too ill to make it to the conference this year. As such, we haven't seen her yet. We also don't know if Anji is the daughter of Rudolph's first or second marriage. Interestingly, whether Battler considers her one of the Ushiromiya cousins differs between script versions. Almost like she exists and doesn't exist at the same time. Rosa is the youngest of Kinzo's children. She has a daughter named Maria. The father is no longer involved. Maria is heavily coded as autistic, potentially with a developmental disability that has made her grow up very little within the past 6 years. Rosa struggles with internalizing her daughter's flaws as her own failure, which manifests as violence upon the one thing in her life she has control over. Rokkenjima also has a few staff members in its employ. Nanjo is a retired doctor and close, longtime personal friend of Kinzo's. He does not live on the island, but he's been spending a lot of time here recently to monitor Kinzo's decaying health. Genji is the head servant of the mansion. He has served Kinzo the longest, and is Kinzo's closest friend. Kumasawa is a part-time servant who has served the family for many years, about as long as Genji, though on and off. Shannon and Kanon are among the youngest servants of the household, recruited from the orphanage Kinzo provides funding for. There, being chosen by Kinzo to work on Rokkenjima for the Ushiromiya family is considered the highest honor. We know of at least 2 other servants from the orphanage who currently work for the household, but they were not scheduled for the family conference and therefore have not yet made an appearance. Goda is a professional chef, given a new lease on life after losing his previous position at a prestigious hotel. He was hired by Kraus and Natsuhi, making him the only servant on Rokkenjima not directly employed by Kinzo. Therefore, he is the only servant on the island not considered by the rest of the family to be Kinzo's spy. Oh, look who's feeling better. Battler is our protagonist. After his mother Asumu passed away, his father Rudolph immediately remarried. Feeling betrayed, Battler left to live with his grandparents on Asumu's side for the past 6 years. He even dropped the Ushiromiya name and went by Asumu's maiden name the entire time. This will be Battler's first family conference since 6 years ago. Kinzo spent a good portion of his life immersing himself in studies of black magic and the occult, something considered little more than a quirk by the rest of his family. It is said that, sometime during the war, Kinzo made a deal with the witch Beatrice for a large amount of gold, the source of his and his family's wealth. Kinzo was deeply in love with Beatrice, even after she passed. In his dying days, he wanted nothing more than to see her again, his wealth and descendants be damned. My understanding of the magic here is likely inaccurate, so please bear with me. In this world, the higher the risk, the more powerful the magic. Upon the start of the family conference, Kinzo initiated a ritual that put the lives of everyone on the island at stake, including his own, in order to bring Beatrice back to his plane of existence. This ritual was a gamble he created called the Witch's Epitaph that would lead whoever solved it to the location of his gold. The first portion begins with a riddle, then descends into describing the gruesome slaughter of 13 people, one by one. The epitaph needs to be solved by the other members of his family if they wish to stop the ritual and save their lives. Otherwise, Beatrice will reclaim everything she gave Kinzo, with interest, the gold and everything he built with it, including the lives of his descendants, in exchange for appearing before him one last time. I imagine, from Kinzo's point of view, the bargain set forth by the epitaph was meant to rouse the spirit of the Golden Witch into participating. Perhaps participation would give her enough of a physical form to commit the murders outlined in the epitaph and collect on her promised dues before being put to rest once more. By the end of episode 1, everyone on the island is presumed dead. In the halls of Purgatory, Battler finds himself surrounded by loved ones, all voicing their astonishment over the grand displays of Beatrice's power. At first, Battler is in equal spirits, which quickly sour as he realizes they're all serious about believing magic killed them. They all argue with him, pushing the logic of his theories, asking him to explain the various feats using human capabilities instead of magic. Wouldn't it just be easier to blame the witch? But Battler continues to question, continues to think, even as everyone, including the narrative itself, protests his stubbornness. Even as Beatrice herself appears, right before his very eyes. One by one, he watches his loved ones mutilated. The invisible hand of his doubt slowly deforming their flesh into mounds of unrecognizable paste. Their voices screaming, most of them pleading with him to believe in magic, to believe in Beatrice, to put an end to their suffering. Only Jessica tells him not to give in. Only Jessica tells him to keep fighting. It is revealed that Beatrice requires unanimous belief for her resurrection to be completed and to keep the magic intact, the very magic holding the souls of his loved ones together. In the face of such abject cruelty, Battler gathers the last shreds of his remaining resolve and spitefully continues his refusal. Amused by his tenacity, she proposes a wager. She'll reset the game board and murder his family all over again, this time in ways that are harder and harder to blame on a human culprit, until he has no choice but to accept the existence of magic. The existence of Beatrice, the Golden Witch. Thank you very much for the follow, Raymond the Destroyer. How are we feeling so far? Everything good? I'm muting the alerts now. I totally forgore. I forgore chat. I forgore. Okay, I muted it. Awesome? Sweet. Let's continue. Oh, hang on. I should probably pull up. There we go. Alright. Sorry, it's really cold in my room and I'm like shivering. Alright. Alright. As of the end of episode 2, the scope covered by this presentation, the epitaph has not been solved. My purpose here today is to take all I know and attempt to explain the Rokkenjima mass murders in both timelines to the best of my ability. My analysis will be guided by 3 major conclusions drawn from the series of events witnessed thus far. Everything I say from now on will be using these conclusions as truths. Should any of these truths be disproven in the future, many of my theories fall apart. But that is the joy of mystery. As these truths are derived from the narrow window I currently have of the story, they are not as infallible as red truths, and are much more subject to change. So, we'll have to choose another color. This should do. Now, where have I seen this color before? It's almost as if I've stared at it before hundreds of times for tens of hours and thousands of words. Well, maybe it'll come back to me one day. Beatrice is on the side of magic. Battler is not. Beatrice wants Battler to accept that the murders were committed with magic. Battler refuses, wanting to explain the murders as committed by human hand. Surprisingly, we do see instances of Beatrice playing fair. One prominent example of Beatrice leaving room for Battler to explain things without magic is that blood is so often not called blood by the narrative text. It's a reddish-black liquid, or a stringy paint. It's not gore or viscera, it's makeup. At one point, Beatrice says, "The rules for my loss have also been established. There's nothing so boring as a game you can't lose, right?" From this, it's easy to draw the following truth. There must exist a plausible, magical, and non-magical explanation for everything, including every murder on the island. As we understand it, that is the entire focus of the game between Beatrice and Battler. Something about this surprised me. As far as I can tell, there's not a single mention of Battler winning this game, meaning he can save his family. We're all familiar with the stories about a plucky young male protagonist fighting with all his might against the impossible and inspiring us with his determination. "If I disprove that magic exists, you'll let me and my family go," is something I would have expected to hear in a game like this from a boy like him. However, Battler's belief in magic has nothing to do with preventing the deaths of his loved ones, or preventing the series of events that occur. According to the credits of both episodes, we're not sure whether or not Battler even survives at the end. Everyone besides him, or nearly everyone, almost certainly dies. This brings us to our second deduction. Those who are dead are dead. The purpose of the game board is to only explain in detail the series of events on Rokkenjima Island between October 4th and 5th, 1986. In Episode 1, a series of murders occurs. When Battler rejects Beatrice's existence, the game board is reset, and significant changes are made to counter the various explanations Battler has for the phenomenon in Episode 1. For example, only one master key per servant with no extras, and increasing the number of locked rooms involved, along with the difficulty of solving them with the introduction of red truths. Perhaps Beatrice latched onto locked rooms because Battler had particular trouble explaining Hideyoshi and Ava's murders in Episode 1. In other words, Episode 1 had its ley lines drawn by an author. The use of magic broke Battler's expectations, and because of this, he stubbornly contested the series of events. If he is to believe in magic, he wants to see a murder only a witch could do. Episode 2's ley lines were then adjusted to force Battler into accommodating magic and the existence of a 19th person and/or witch into his expectations. This leads to our third and final deduction. Beatrice is in control of the narrative in Episode 1 and Episode 2. At one point, I thought I may have discovered explicit confirmation of this theory with the ever-present background of the message history. I have this awful habit of looking too deeply into the background, which comes in handy for some adventures, but others not so much. Once, I mistook the shadows on the corner floor of Kinzo's study as pools of blood. Another time, I counted the light bulbs and all the lighting fixtures of every room, searching for a pattern in the numbers between them. I don't think that line of thinking will work too well for this adventure. Still, I thought it'd be best to check. Repetition requested! The wallpaper of the message browser is purely decorative, having no deliberate bearing on the story. Denied. As far as the witches of the council are aware, for all known intents and purposes, the butterflies present in the background of the message board appear to be simply a stylistic choice meant to keep the witch Beatrice's presence at the forefront of the player's mind. Further, we can confirm it was added in later versions of the tale. Damn. Thought I had something there. I suppose if any future episode narratives are not written by Beatrice and the background of the message browser doesn't change, the relevance I'd theorize becomes weaker. That's okay. We have plenty more ideas where that came from. I have a confession to make. In creating this presentation, theorizing about the murders was actually where I spent the least of my time. There was just so much more to see, to know. So much time was spent familiarizing ourselves with the pieces on the board, but I wonder, if Beatrice really was in control of the narratives for the first 2 episodes, do we really know any of them at all? Though they have their flaws, she set up every character up in a realistic, nuanced way that afforded them each unique sympathy. All with the exception of Kinzo, who was almost comically evil compared to everyone else on the island. I can't help but think that choice was personal. Because a meta-narrative is involved, it's time to introduce a couple of tools I'll need to help explain a few of my theories. During the main journey, when I was still with my friends, I hastily cobbled together a diagram as certain thoughts came to me. The Umiception board. Do you remember the Umiception board, Jeff? This feels like so long ago. But now that I've had time to retrace my steps, I've been able to refine this theory a little more. It's not as whimsical as its predecessor, but I hope I maintain some of its original charm. Please don't look too closely. I'm a writer, not an artist. There are plenty of allusions to chess within the text, and how to strategize by thinking about your opponent's moves. The events on Rokkenjima are referred to consistently as a game board, with individual people as pieces upon it. However, I think it's misleading to imagine the game board between Beatrice and Battler as existing on a single layer. Held here on the first level is what I call the asymmetry of information theory. For a number of reasons we'll explore later, it is extremely likely for there to be just a single culprit of the murders. Let me clarify. Culprit here does not mean murderer. Culprit is used as a catch-all for not only the murderer or murderers, but whoever helped facilitate the murders themselves. Whether they helped move corpses or simply told a convenient lie to help the murderer get away with the crime, they will all be considered culprits. With this definition in mind, I propose that all pieces on the game board operated on different levels of knowledge, with some even possibly advancing to higher layers as the murders took place. Layer 1 is for those who did not know anything about what was taking place. Layer 2 is for those who held a secret from the rest of the family that made them look suspicious, but had nothing to do with the murders themselves. Layer 3 is for those who had partial knowledge of the murders. And Layer 4 is for the masterminds who orchestrated the events. Anyone who touches Layer 3 or 4 during the course of the murders is considered a culprit, though I believe the division between Layer 3 and 4 is still an important distinction to make. Considering everyone, or nearly everyone, dies by the end of both episodes, those on Layer 3 were likely lured under the false pretense they would survive past the end. Thank you for the follow! Wait, hang on, did that play? Wait, why did I hear it? Where am I hearing that from? I thought I muted your ass. It did not? Okay, I heard it from somewhere. As long as you didn't hear it, that's all I care about. Alright, cool. Alright, sweet. I probably just have a window open. Those on Layer 3 were likely lured under the false pretense they would survive past the end, while those on Layer 4 were fully aware of the endgame. We'll examine this closer later. For now, we need to move on to Level 2. By the start of Episode 2, where I led to believe Beatrice and Battler are in a chess match with Beatrice advancing her pieces and Battler advancing his in return in a grand exhibition of magical versus non-magical deduction. But, if you'll remember our third truth, Beatrice is in control of the narrative in Episode 1 and Episode 2. We assume that Beatrice is entirely in charge of the game board. As far as we can tell, the only piece Battler controls is himself, as Beatrice maneuvers the other more than 17, less than 18 pieces around him, in order to tell a story Battler alone is in charge of disputing. That means the scene above board looks less like this, and more like this. Recall our second truth. Those who are dead. The purpose of the game board is to only explain in detail the series of events on Rokkenjima Island between October 4th and 5th, 1986. If Beatrice's goal was to kill everyone on the island, she would have won by virtue of their deaths alone. If Beatrice's goal was to have Battler believe in magic, she would have won by the end of Episode 2, where Battler fully gives up. But she kept playing, meaning she must have other win conditions. What Beatrice and Battler disagree on is not necessarily the series of events themselves, which Battler can't seem to influence much, nor the results of the events, which have ended with mass deaths both times, but proving whether or not magic exists through the framework of a series of events under her control. Beatrice is drawing ley lines Battler stubbornly refuses to follow. Beatrice is trying to tell him a story. The framework of the adventure being a story in and of itself isn't a massive revelation. The Episode 1 postscript says the witch made a point of leaving behind this tale, which had no need to be told, and permitted it to be spread. It then describes a wine bottle being found in the ocean a few years later, containing notebook pages telling quote-unquote this tale, which went on to spread as urban legend due to a largely inconclusive police investigation. Then, of course, the ominous claim, while the notebook pages tell of this mysterious incident, they do not tell of the truth behind it. The notebook pages are signed by Maria, along with a message begging for the truth to be uncovered. Maria's love for the occult and belief in Beatrice was unwavering in both episodes. She drew witches and studied magic in her spare time. It could be even claimed she wrote the death scenes found in the character menu, as they praised the witch's actions and contained the transcription of her unique laughter. So, could Maria have gotten in too deep with Beatrice, regretting it far too late? I don't believe so. Remember, Beatrice is in control of the narrative in Episode 1 and Episode 2. Beatrice is in control of all the pieces except Battler, and Game Masters are no strangers to playing the roles of NPCs during their adventures. The notebook pages are being written as Maria, not by Maria. I think Beatrice is speaking through her. Please uncover the truth. That is my only wish. This is not the first time Beatrice has spoken through other characters either. By the end of Episode 2, Battler had given up and accepted the existence of both Magic and Beatrice. In the tea party that followed, Rosa was instead shown to be the holdout, preventing Beatrice's magic from activating. Beatrice proceeded to force-feed her a banquet made from various body parts of her own family members, before Battler rediscovered his resolve and sprang back into the narrative to make her stop. However, during the Episode 2 Witch's Tea Party, Battler is told by Lambda Delta that Beatrice was putting on a show in order to inspire Battler back from the depths of his despair. In other words, the tea party was staged to get Battler fighting again. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to conclude the Episode 1 tea party was also staged for a similar reason. Meaning Beatrice was speaking to Battler through everyone there, debating his logic in order to keep him thinking. Meaning Jessica's desperate standalone plea for Battler to not give in to the witch was actually being said by the witch herself. Are you still with me? Don't give up yet. We haven't even gotten to Schrodinger's gun. Partway through Episode 1, Natsuhi retrieves a gun from Kinzo's study to arm herself during ongoing suspicions of which survivor is the murderer. We hear it fire once near the end of the episode. Partway through Episode 2, Rosa retrieves a gun from Kinzo's study to arm herself during ongoing suspicions of which survivor is the murderer. We see it fire repeatedly near the end of the episode. Depending on how events unfold, Natsuhi and Rosa both have the potential of retrieving the gun from Kinzo's study and firing it before the end of the episode. But someone will always retrieve the gun from Kinzo's study, and the gun will always be fired before the episode is over. Level 3 is Quantum Observation, or Schrodinger's gun. Because no one knows what happened on the island, anything could have happened on the island. All possibilities on Rokkenjima exist simultaneously until they are observed. Level 3 is the highest narrative level I've been able to discern so far. Beatrice, Bernkastel, and Lambda Delta can be found here, along with any of their furniture. Battler does not yet seem to understand the importance of the fact he exists on this layer. In a previous adventure of mine, the protagonist was tasked with repeating the same 22-minute loop millions of times over in an effort to find the specific trajectory needed to save the universe. In the end, it is his gaze, the gaze of a conscious observer, that secures a new path forward. It's tempting to linger in this moment while every possibility still exists, but unless they are collapsed by an observer, they will never be more than possibilities. By virtue of engaging in this game with him, Beatrice has given Battler the power of the Observer to witness and canonize a series of events leading to the mass murders. On Level 3, Bernkastel mentions crossing the fragments when traversing into Beatrice's territory, after which Beatrice says she's honored to have her as an observer. Later on, Beatrice says your fates are nothing more than fragments when antagonizing Shannon and Kanan. Fragments may be the equivalent of variant timelines, different cat boxes, possibilities witches are able to peek into from Level 3. There's a few thematic ties between witches and television in this way. Maria is an aspiring witch, and her love of watching TV is brought up a few times. Bernkastel says that trying to help us feels like trying to reach characters through a screen, and that's how you can tell she's a witch. Kanan has an odd one-off mention about brawn tubes. Some of the transitions between chapters is a glass screen shattering. I get the sense witches may be able to see all possibilities, but are powerless to truly observe them, to canonize them, to collapse them into a single reality. They can only influence other pieces on the board into doing so. So, what is Beatrice trying to get Battler to observe? As we concluded earlier, Beatrice's win condition must be more than just mass murder or having Battler believe in magic. She had already triumphed in both regards by the end of episode 2. Battler acquiesced. He was turned into furniture. He was stripped naked and placed on a leash and killed over and over again as a mindless plaything. But her win condition was not satisfied. This mystery has lingered in my mind, so much so that I feel hints of its heartbeat in the tempos of other pulses. I was on another adventure recently. Funny enough, it also featured the meta-narrative of an author dealing with a reader who sometimes refused to follow the ley lines of his story. In their realm, they are the only two consciousnesses featured in existence. In this scene, the narrator has been left alone, isolated and away from the protagonist for a very long time. I'm realizing that I needed to know that someone was listening. I needed there to be a vessel through which my words were moving. Not the outcomes, not the story, none of that matters anymore. I give it all up. I'll give up every branching path. I'll burn my story to the ground. One single thing I need, and God, I can see now that I need it more than anything, is to know that someone else is taking it in. If you can hear me, then maybe it means I'm real. Maybe I'm not just a fiction. Was I scared of that all along? Perhaps, yes. Perhaps I've been scared this whole time that if I stop speaking, I'll slip backwards into the silence and be consumed by it. I can't lose myself in this treasure of emptiness between you and me. In those moments, the emptiness folds itself outward in between the two of us, and I am suspended in its unyielding quietness. I can feel the edges of my reality curdling inward and decaying. I can tell that I am becoming less and less real. Yet to speak to you now, I am alive. I am truly and completely here. I am a being. I am someone. I am something. I am being listened to. I am being recognized. The emptiness between us has collapsed, and I feel right now like I am not a work of fiction. I feel as though I occupy space in this world again, and I have cast a shadow onto the wall. My heart ached for the narrator. My heart ached for her. While antagonizing Kanan over breaking Jessica's heart, Beatrice says nothing saddens me more than being forgotten. While speaking through the ghosts of Kanan and Jessica, pushing Battler to think harder about how he can clear Kanan's name from the accusations of being Jessica's murderer, Beatrice chides, "The laments of the dead never reach the living." She's dead. She exists. She's dead. She exists. Why can't you see her? Beatrice herself is quantum in nature. She exists between the pages, a version no one's heard before, a version she could only reveal while pretending to be someone else, a version she allowed to float in a wine bottle cast into the ocean years ago, because she only exists as long as someone is looking at her. She is not real, not yet, not so long as the message within her story is not received. But Beatrice doesn't just need Battler to see her, she needs him to observe her and what happened to her in her birdcage, in her sliced-off part of the sea, so that the quantum flux of her and her story might finally collapse into reality. Beatrice is a quantum saint who wishes to be canonized under the baptism of Battler's gaze, and she loathes the amount of power he has over her. And she loathes the fact he doesn't even realize it, and she loathes that he is so willing to throw it all away. What's the non-magic explanation for his struggle with Beatrice, you ask? It's pretty simple. Battler is the lone survivor of the massacre, likely living with Angie. He knows the truth about the murders, but either has amnesia or has repressed the horrors so much he's forgotten it entirely. The notebook pages surface, and they trigger his memories because they contain details only someone who was present would know. Purgatory is just post-amnesiac Battler poring over notebook pages somewhere in Angie's spare bedroom, refusing to come to terms with the truth of what occurred. I want to take a brief aside here to talk about the 18th versus 19th person, and how that can potentially relate to Beatrice. Near the beginning of the story, we're told that Rokkenjima is located in an archipelago called the Izu 7, People believe there's only 7 islands, but there's actually more, and Rokkenjima is one of the islands that don't get counted. The theme of having another person inside of oneself comes up quite a lot. Nanjo says Kinzo has 2 sides of him, one wise and one mad, and in their entire friendship he only ever got to know half of the man. One moment, Maria is still sounding out words as she reads. The next, she reads through Beatrice's letter without missing a beat. Multiple comments are made about seeing someone else behind her eyes. Jessica talks about splitting herself between the person she is at home and the person she is at school, and encourages Kanan to do the same in order to carve out a life for himself and to stop considering himself furniture. In early episode 3, Ava is shown to have her younger self as a distinct personality inside of her, who hears her and speaks to her regularly. Shannon speaks of being torn between the virtuous part of herself and the part that sides with the witch. Many of these could be metaphorical, of course, but I feel as though it's happened too many times to be a complete coincidence, and I've spoken of other patterns with far less occurrences. Besides, an altar would allow for a 19th person to both exist and not exist. I do think becoming a witch means gaining an altar in some form. I hope we see Maria and young Ava become witches, as I believe their altars have the strongest presence in the text. I hope somehow we can see Battler become one, as he's already operating on level 3 and might already be an altar himself without realizing it. Having him deny his own existence would be funny, I think. After all, above all, I do think Beatrice is an altar of someone on Rokkenjima. Kanan and Shannon's existences are heavily tied to one another. Kumasawa mentions that Kinzo's, quote, trifling whim led to Natsuhi rejecting Shannon and Kanan's existences, which, when considering Natsuhi's self-worth being tied to birthing an heir to the family, makes me think the two of them may be products of affairs, and that Kinzo's orphanage may just be a place where he can put them all. They are both counterparts and foils in many, many ways, most obviously in how their love is explored. Shannon curses herself for being born with a heart, and in both episodes chooses to love George. Kanan adheres to his self-perception as furniture, fervently denying himself the feelings he has for Jessica until it's far too late. Shannon always sees the ocean as blue. Kanan can only see gray. You know, it's funny. When we first met Kanan, I actually thought Shannon was just cross-dressing. The identical eye colors or separate introductions or similar names, at least before we learned of the conventions at Kinzo's orphanage. I drifted away from the theory for a while because they've been seen together in multiple places and have spoken separately to different people at the same time. But, knowing the reliability of scenes can be called into question based on who's observing it, if scenes can't be trusted because Battler's piece wasn't there to observe it, or because the scene itself was populated by culprits who corroborated and agreed upon a lie we saw as the truth, like wolves outnumbering sheep, I can see it being possible. But I've decided to hold on to my theories until further evidence supports it. It requires one too many leaps in logic I'm not confident in making yet. For now, I will utilize another lesser theory of mine as a framework. Assuming Beatrice is an altar, and assuming she is quantum in nature, I think Beatrice is a form of Schrodinger's gun onto herself, and I believe that either Shannon or Kanan are always destined to manifest her. You would think the magic explanation for murders would be easy. Everything Beatrice said happened. The end. But I'd like to think there's a little more to it than that. If we push the Schrodinger's box metaphor a little harder, I think we can suspect the possibility of Kinzo already being dead in the non-magic explanation, but alive in the magic explanation, making him both dead and alive at the same time. There are countless instances of the text mentioning that Rokkenjima has been cut off from the world and cut off from reality itself. In episode 2, Ava and Kyrie all but look directly at the camera and say, "We're trapped in a world of fiction right now, so don't believe anything you see on the island." One of the biggest tells came after early episode 3, when Kouadorian was introduced. Because in episode 1, the third-person narrator says, quote, "The Ushiromiya family mansion was the only thing on Rokkenjima." With this, Beatrice is indicating either, 1. Genji, Kanan, and or Natsuhi do not know about Kouadorian, 2. Genji, Kanan, and or Natsuhi stubbornly denied its existence, or 3. She did not want Battler to know it existed at all and used the third-person narrator to convince him as such. Regardless, we can conclude the narrator is unreliable, and even the scenes we witness might not have transpired exactly as shown. This opens up a whole other world of possibilities I am actively choosing not to embark too far upon this early in the story, lest this presentation never be completed. Instead, we're mostly going to apply this theory to Kinzo, in that anyone who speaks to or claims to have spoken to Kinzo is automatically suspect. Upon waking up alive after the first twilight, Kinzo says, "I will not shame myself like last time," a clear indicator that he remembers the events of the previous episode. I believe that in magical scenario Kinzo knows he is dead in the non-magical scenario, and that the ritual was a deliberate play to maximize his chances of seeing Beatrice. He was aware the ritual would turn Rokkenjima into Schrodinger's Island, as it would force the area under the witch's gaze and open up fragments of possibilities, other episodes, where he could remain alive until he saw her again, hoping there was at least one fragment where he was not chosen by the roulette. Kinzo did not care about being torn apart and dragged to hell at the end of episode 2, because he found the fragment in which his plan succeeded. He'd won. I also propose that, to facilitate this, Kinzo's study in and of itself is a second, smaller Schrodinger's box, preventing him from being observed from Layer 3 and keeping him alive as long as he wasn't observed by anyone but his own furniture. Somehow, he was lured out in episode 1. Likely a skill issue. Let's examine the episode 1 murders from a non-magic point of view. As mentioned at the beginning, the only red truths I dared ask from the council were those that would directly contradict a conclusion due to an objective misunderstanding or oversight on my part. A valid theory does not mean a correct theory. It simply means I got all my facts straight. So, when I proposed an outline of my non-magic explanation for the episode 1 murders, valid is presented! My heart just about stopped. I hope to not disappoint. The pieces on Layer 1, those with no knowledge of events, are as follows: Kyrie, Rosa, George, Jessica, and Goda, who are pawns, Battler, who is the observer. The pieces on Layer 2, those carrying a secret unrelated to the murders, are as follows: Rudolph, Kumasawa, who are pawns, Natsuhi and Kraus, who are rooks uniquely able to castle or hide the king. The pieces on Layer 3, culprits who assisted with the murders in some way, are as follows: Nanjo, bishop closest to the king, Eva and Hideyoshi, who are knights, hired mercenaries. The pieces on Layer 4, the masterminds, are as follows: Kinzo, king, exists. Beatrice, queen, exists. Genji, second bishop closest to the king. Shannon, Kanan, and Maria, pawns that can ascend into the queen upon crossing the board. Maria's letter and the umbrella were delivered to Maria in the flower garden by either Shannon or Kanan wearing Beatrice's dress. Both Natsuhi and Eva at separate times suggest Shannon wearing Beatrice's dress to be enough to convince Maria of her identity. However, I think it goes a bit deeper. I believe Maria, as a budding witch, would be able to recognize Beatrice fronting. A disguise might not have necessarily been needed. In the case of the first Twilight, the only corpse identities Battler, the observer, confirmed himself were those of his parents. Every other corpse has the potential to be faked or otherwise unreliable. Nanjo providing a false medical testimony would place him as a culprit. Mutilated faces suggest the actual cause of death was deliberately obscured. I suspect a lower caliber firearm from Kinzo's collection, with reasoning to follow. Shannon and Krause's death entries in the main menu were phrased slightly differently from the rest of the bodies. Comparatively, their faces could have been more intact than was indicated by assumption. In addition, Shannon specifically had a narrative line wistfully hinting at the possibility of wiping off her quote-unquote makeup to see the remainder of her smile. Due to the markings on Natsuhi's doorknob, Natsuhi was likely targeted to be one of the deaths of the first Twilight. However, the scorpion charm Jessica gave to her, which she subsequently hung over her doorknob, meant she would have to be skipped in order to preserve the myth of the Golden Witch. This means another body would have had to, quote, take her place. Genji, Kanan, Eva, and Hideyoshi were alone together at the storehouse for an extended period of time before fetching Nanjo and Natsuhi from the mansion. The sigil could have been painted upon the shutters at any time, and the integrity of the locks are negated by the presence of multiple servants with access to the key. Hideyoshi is also very insistent on blaming the supernatural at and following the storehouse, an attitude we don't see replicated in later characterizations. Shannon, Kanan, Genji, Eva, Hideyoshi, and Nanjo are the prime suspected culprits of the first Twilight. Krause shuffled the servant schedules around last minute as a form of protection, which would have been counterintuitive for the involvement of any servants except Goda. If we assume Kinzo's servants are culprits, this lowers Krause's suspicion. In the case of the second Twilight, Genji and Kanon were the ones who discovered the chain lock on the door. The chain lock had only been observed by others after it had already been cut with Kanon's bolt cutters, calling the integrity of the lock into question. Genji and Kanon could have committed the murders at any time before chaining the lock and then cutting it. Genji and Kanon were the only ones to see the door before the sigil was painted on it. A smaller note, but Battler swears to, quote, grip the killer by the collar before the end of the night. Battler had already done this earlier to Kanon in the kitchen when discussing details about Beatrice. Kanon and Genji are the prime suspected culprits of the second Twilight. The case of the receipt seal. The easiest explanation possible is that Natsuhi lied about seeing Kinzo. Gold has thematic ties to the truth. Kraus taking Natsuhi to see the singular gold bar retrieved from his investigation could serve as a metaphor for him trusting Natsuhi with the truth of Kinzo having already died. This metaphor could extend to Genji as well, who handed her a golden key to go visit Kinzo on her own. The constantly described sweet, sickening chemical stench from Kinzo's room could be formaldehyde or other embalming fluids to keep his body intact. Natsuhi may have fabricated one last wish fulfillment conversation with Kinzo's body to bolster her own confidence in how she carries herself around the rest of the family. Natsuhi is suspected of lying about Kinzo's death, but is not considered a culprit. In the case of the fourth Twilight, Kinzo already being dead means the incineration of the corpse was another method of disguising the original cause and potentially time of death. The person responsible for burning his body may not be responsible for his death. However, it is worth noting that the boiler room has an entrance out to the courtyard. A culprit shoving Kinzo's body from his study window is an option for transportation. In the case of the fifth Twilight, Kanon being killed was not fully observed by a trusted party, so the integrity of the scene is in question. Kumasawa only came in on the aftermath. However, this theory only holds water if both Genji and Nanjo are culprits due to the handling of Kanon's body afterwards, and the fact no one really checks on Kanon after he dies. Genji and Nanjo are the prime suspected culprits of the fifth Twilight. Genji, Maria, and/or Nanjo being culprits would also easily explain the letter that appears on the table in Kinzo's study with the remainder of the survivors. In the case of the 6th, 7th, and 8th Twilights, they are most easily explained if Shannon or Kanon were culprits and Shannon and/or Kanon's deaths were faked. Whoever it was the same person who approached Maria with the umbrella, as Maria recognized Beatrice from before. Like before, Kenji, Kumasawa, and Nanjo's faces may have been destroyed to hide their method of death. In the case of the 9th Twilight, assuming the sound effects were accurate, only one shot was heard from the parlor as Battler broke down the candlestick-locked door. Natsuhi was holding a smoking shotgun when she was found. The wound in her forehead does not match the caliber of the gun she was holding. This retroactively makes me believe the primary murder weapon across Twilights was a smaller caliber gun, whose sound was drowned out by the firing of Natsuhi's shotgun. The biggest flaw of this theory is that 6 shots ringing out in the dining hall during the first Twilight would have had to have been heard by people in the mansion at the time, such as Goda and Kumasawa. However, the 6 could have been killed in a more silent way in the dining hall that still affected the way their faces looked. All theories require the assistance of Shannon, Genji, and Kanon at minimum. Kinzo wouldn't have to be alive to have set up a scorched earth scenario for his ritual, and it could have been carried out as his last will and testament by his servants. Alternatively, Shannon or Kanon may have received Beatrice as an altar, becoming the primary culprit for carrying out the Twilights. Genji was ordered to treat Beatrice on the same level as Kinzo, so he played along. Alternatively, Shannon or Kanon could be one of Kinzo's secret children who learned the true depths of his depravities and went scorched earth to take revenge. However, unless there were deeply personal grievances we are not aware of, I can see no motivation for such a violent, strategic mass murder, rather than just making Kinzo suffer while he was alive. Once again, as before, I proposed an outline of my non-magic explanation for the Episode 2 murders to the Red Truth Council. Valid as presented! Let's go, baby! The old boy still got it. Let's begin. The pieces on Layer 1, those with no knowledge of events, are as follows. Kyrie, George, Jessica as pawns. Battler is the observer. The pieces on Layer 2, those carrying a secret unrelated to the murders, are as follows. Rudolph, Kumasawa, Eva, Hideyoshi, who are pawns. Natsuhi, Kraus, who are rooks uniquely able to castle and hide the king. The pieces on Layer 3, culprits who assisted with the murders in some way, are as follows. Nanjo, one of the bishops closest to the king. Rosa and Goda, knights, hired mercenaries. The pieces on Layer 4, the masterminds, are as follows. Kinzo, king, exists. Beatrice, queen, exists. Genji, the second bishop closest to the king. Shannon, Kanon, and Maria, pawns, who can ascend into queen upon crossing the board. Beatrice in the Rose Garden once again could be explained as Shannon or Kanan wearing Beatrice's outfit. We know Shannon has bought Kanan stylish clothes before, so we know she has a sense of fashion. However, Kanan would have been holding one of the candies Maria gave out upon arrival on the island. Shannon wasn't there. This time, I'm more inclined to believe it was a physical disguise, due to Beatrice being able to fool the adults one at a time. Kyrie was exceedingly cautious, however, and only acquiesced after the other adults. She likely didn't buy the disguise completely. In the case of the first Twilight, because everyone was in need of money, it wouldn't have been impossible for Beatrice to convince everyone to gather in the chapel and convince them of her identity based on the additional knowledge she had about Kinzo and his gold. However, I don't think the adults would have agreed to a roulette so easily. The table in the chapel, quote, wasn't supposed to be there, so they could have been convinced via the chapel note in the dining room that it was a secret negotiation, held in Kinzo's sacred place. That would explain the used tea set in the dining room and the note that was left in there. The adults moved to the chapel for further discussion and were taken out while already seated around the table. Their faces were undamaged, but I still believe the staging, being slit from stomach to throat, is meant to hide the true cause of death as before. Corrosive acid would cause vomiting, disfigurement from the chin down, or some other type of poisoning comes to mind. Gunshot wounds to the chest are possible, but the lack of damage to the chairs, along with not just aiming for the head, makes it less likely. For Maria's letter and the chapel key, little explanation needs to be given, assuming Rosa was a culprit. Swapping out envelopes from Maria's bag or sneaking the envelope key out and resealing the letter are all possible. Lying about the chapel being locked in the first place is also possible, as no one was typically allowed near it unless ordered. Rosa is a primary suspect due to 1, not mentioning the devil's sacrament in the chapel during the entire course of the murders and subsequent investigation, and 2, the constant aggressive projection of blame on others to avoid being suspected herself. We know how much she needed the money, so she was likely promised gold in return. In the case of the second Twilight, Kanan was killed but his corpse is absent, his master key is on Jessica's person. Genji and Shannon are the only ones who both would have had enough time to murder them and were in possession of master keys to be able to lock the doors from the outside. In addition, they had an alibi of speaking with Kinzo, who may or may not exist, and if he does, may have covered for them with the writing a will out of nowhere after vehemently refusing one scene. I can see Genji killing Kanan and Jessica, but the absence of Kanan's corpse is exceedingly suspicious, because leaving it there would have made the most sense to fulfill the second Twilight. Genji has no motivation to have moved Kanan's body. The only other explanation I can think of is that Kanan's body wasn't actually dead. Kanan, as an identity, was killed. He either carries Beatrice as an alter and became Beatrice from that moment forward, or Kanan and Shannon really are the same person and only Shannon was left. This would put Kanan and Shannon in possession of 2 master keys and explain why the corpse isn't there. Even then, I have a really hard time imagining Kanan killing Jessica, but it could be considered a finality in that, as Shannon's foil, he closed off that possibility with her while Shannon and George still had futures at the time. Kanan and Shannon are the primary suspects of the second Twilight. In the case of Kanan and the 7th and 8th Twilights, we have unreliable narrators aplenty. Goda can't seem to spit a story out, so it's up to Genji to cover for him. Kanan's body quote-unquote disappears at the end, so if he has a corpse, I doubt it was ever even in the same room. Kanan fully embodying Beatrice could explain Goda's bewilderment and how the corpse has disappeared in the survivor's absence. However, I think it'd be impossible for someone with Kanan/Beatrice's frame to move Kumasawa and Nanjo out by themselves. I imagine the servants hiding the bodies before reporting them. If Shannon and Kanan are the same person, I can also see Genji and or Shannon being the murderers of Nanjo and Kumasawa. With the bodies gone, as soon as reliable witnesses came to investigate, this flags the possibility of Nanjo and or Kumasawa faking their deaths between now and later, or the murderer faking the time of death by having them die elsewhere at another time to fulfill the epitaph. Kanan, Shannon, Goda, and Genji are the primary suspects of the 7th and 8th Twilights. In the case of the 4th, 5th, and 6th Twilights, all 5 master keys are accounted for, and Natsuhi's room key is with George, who is dead inside the locked room. Shannon's body positioning is extremely suspect upon discovery. It would be bizarre to have died from a skull injury with the stake that deep in, but having it fall out in such a loose manner afterwards. If it wasn't for the keys, I would have blamed this one on Genji as well, but someone inside the room must have killed the other 2 and either faked their death or went on to kill themselves. Shannon's wound is one of the most grievous confirmations we've received so far, so I don't think she's faking. On the other hand, I really can't see George or Gota faking their own deaths and or having the stomach to pull off such a horrific scene. In retrospect, Natsuhi's room was also clearly a nefarious setup via Genji, Gota, and Shannon to get George isolated in there. If George had to die, I can see Shannon killing herself over having nothing left to live for. Gota and Shannon are the primary suspects of the 4th, 5th, and 6th Twilights. In the case of Nanjo and Kumasawa's corpses, Genji found their corpses much later in the evening, out in the courtyard, which you can only access from inside the mansion. This makes me feel as if he definitely had something to do with moving or hiding the bodies to find them in timing with the epitaph, potentially with the assistance or under the order of Beatrice Cannon. Explaining the Golden Land Party with a non-magical angle to it is not an exercise of imagination I am prepared for. At this moment, I'm not entirely clear on the possible symbolism there, aside from Battler surrendering wholly to the concept of magic and losing himself completely in his denial. Burn Castell and Lambda Delta make appearances. Battler actually sees Beatrice and Kinzo for the first time, in person. There must be some significance there. If anything, I do like the idea of either Genji or Beatrice Cannon hunting Rosa and Maria down across the island as the two of them try to escape. Interestingly, the limitations of this theory have the same predictions as the last. All theories require the assistance of Shannon, Genji, and Cannon at minimum. Kinzo's last will and testament executed by his servants, Cannon receiving Beatrice as an altar, or Shannon and or going scorched earth still apply here. I feel as though I'm catching on to traces of true intent, but nothing solid as of yet. Servants are assisting with murders and roping Ushiromiya family members in to assist with the deception, but why? Is it so important to keep Beatrice's magic alive on this island? Is Beatrice herself merely an allegory for the amalgamation of all of Kinzo's worst secrets? Why are Genji, Cannon, and Shannon this committed to carrying out the scenarios? What is the Golden Land, and why are they so transfixed on going there? Why is it, even in the hyper-fantasy magic ending, Maria still died in such a terrifying way, and was not led gently to the Golden Land in spite of her unwavering loyalty to the witch? Doesn't Beatrice keep her promises? Truly not sure what to make of it so far, but that only has me more excited to continue. We're almost at the end. How exciting. I have an early theory about the epitaph involving some of the most basic kanji I can remember from university. I think the Sweetfish River running through my beloved home of old is a train that runs through where Kinzo was originally from, as a branch family member. Forgot to add it here, but as I was supposed to enunciate as a branch family member, because as a branch family member he would not have lived where the main branch family was, and I don't think we know where the branch family lived. So, not the place that was mentioned in the story, the place that was mentioned in passing a while ago. Wherever the train is, it leads south away from Tokyo, or is south away from Tokyo. There's some kind of special station to look out for, and a specific exit at which you're meant to disembark, involving two people, which may be a metaphor for exits or some kind of fork in the road. I just have one more adventure to tell you about. One that helped me think about where Battler's story might be going. There was once a divide between the two. It was life, it was death, it was a bout of rain. Those who came after questioned the true nature of the divide. It was bloodline, it was reason, it was a flash of insight. A brave soul leaps across and turns to look back at the divide. He sees a door never meant to be opened, and an imaginary wall. Adler, codename Enigma, is a cryptographer with survivor's guilt over the loss of his sister, Greta Hoffman, a fellow researcher, on a field mission. They were both incredibly intelligent scientific/magical researchers who applied their talents in different ways. Adler spent his early life pursuing a unified theory with rabid curiosity. He saw the universe as a puzzle, and every puzzle could be solved. Greta used her strength to see the wonders of the world from a different angle, wonders that could only be seen lost between the cracks of bureaucracy, to help people. Adler has always looked down upon the tedium of bureaucracy, and years later, when he finds himself as the acting director of his research facility, the feelings are only amplified. He was shoved into this role by circumstance, but unless he takes the mantle permanently, a larger organization threatens to seize oversight of the facility, quashing the spirit of intellectual curiosity under the boot of militant efficiency. You see, there's always been a door between Adler and his goals, a door he watched Greta walk through, a door he continues to knock against even though it never gave him answers. At Adler's research facility, there is a mysterious magical artifact that researchers use to run disaster protocol simulations. The sandbox itself contains snapshots of consciousnesses from people who have come into contact with it, who live and act and perish and reset with every simulated disaster. A copy of Greta exists here too. When Adler informs her of the nature of her existence, the futility of her efforts, she says it doesn't matter. She still has to see the end for herself, even if it means death. She still has to try. Even here, she is still trapped in her cycles. When the sandbox destabilizes and causes a language-based cognitohazard throughout the facility, Adler dives in to fix it, where it is shown to have the unique property of changing its environment in accordance with the number of observers. In order to reach his destination, Adler needs to close his eyes. And when he arrives at the Tower of Babel, he is faced with a door the simulated Greta had already reached. The major enemy that prolongs the destabilization of the Pocket Realm was trying to invent a universal language to solve Shannon entropy. Defeating the enemy means defeating this tenacious, rabidly curious, goal-oriented version of himself. He wants to help people like his sister did. There is a mourning for closing the previous chapter of his life, but his disdain for bureaucracy is only outweighed by his disdain for watching fellow researchers be buried under it. He wants to afford the same opportunities for future minds that he had. He finally understands his sister. When he studies the door again, he realizes there is no wall around it. The higher the number of observers, the more chaotic the island becomes. The higher the entropy, the more difficult the story will be to understand. Battler is firing volleys of arrows at the door in front of him. He's trying to minimize the entropy in the communication between himself and Beatrice. Beatrice is telling a fable, keeping things cloaked in magic and context, and all he thinks he wants is the truth, the raw data, the information she's trying to convey to him. What he fails to realize is the heart of that truth, that the truth isn't just how his family died, but why they were killed, an ugliness he himself is reluctant to face. The magic door that Battler continues denying the existence of will not open for him, because it was never about whether or not magic exists, but if he shifts his perspective, he will find another way to the other side, to see what Beatrice wants him to see. If he stops to think about the story, really think about it, he will look up and find there are no walls around the door. That magic does not need to be denied in order to see the truth. In order to truly understand the heart of the story, in order for Battler's observation to not affect the sequence of events, he needs to pivot away from being an observer. Instead of collapsing all possibilities into a single reality, he needs to close his eyes. He needs to realize the importance of his own position above the board. He needs to stop retreading Beatrice's ley lines and write a story of his own. One step past acceptance, understanding. I think having her story rewritten by someone who looks at her with love would make her feel more real than anything. Battler and Maria both have identical crosses on their outfits. Maria, who's in love with magic, wears hers right side up. Battler, opposed to magic, wears his upside down. Once he learns the truth lies somewhere in between, I hope he stops wearing the cross. The scent of cardamom hangs in the air. Two figures, friends, sit lazily around a tea table, both reclined in elegantly but without pretense, comfortable in their conversation. The girl with ginger hair, curly like copper bronze, dangles a glass of thick and creamy orange liquid from her fingertips. She's gesturing with it as she speaks, and the ice clinks against itself and the cup.
Look, I'll tell you right now. This Ryukishi guy is one fake son of a bitch.
The other figure exhales out a laugh through his nose as he pulls his own glass, chalky erythritol lemonade, away from his lips, setting it down on a coaster. It doesn't take long for him to pick up on what she's doing, antenna twitching like animal ears.
I mean, broadly, he's a fucking hack.
I don't even think Seven is his real last name.
It's 6.
The ginger girl momentarily stops. An ache pangs her chest. 6, 7. Something about that doublet seemed funny. Not that she would know why.
If good artists take inspiration and great artists steal, then what would you classify any of this as?
Stories about stories, fiction within fiction, games within games. You know what this is, right? What this reminds you of? We both know.
Because when you put together all the variables, the guy obviously played Super Paper Mario before he wrote this scenario.
Exactly.
Maybe he like fiction jambalaya it. Like he just picked a bunch of tasty stuff from other yummy stuff and made it into his stuff.
Explain.
Like, how can I put this? It's like that part at the end of Saint Elsewhere, where it turns out the hospital was in the snow globe the whole time.
Oh, or that part in Control where you keep getting phone calls from a guy who you think is talking to you, but he's like fully dead and it's just an echo of his thoughts bouncing through the phone lines.
And it's also like that part from Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes, where you finally get to the guy who's been stuck in the game, only to find out the only place he'd really belong is the game.
Oh, or like Kamen Rider O's! I think Beatrice is a greed, and the goat dudes are like her yummies.
Or like in Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, where, well, you know. Shouldn't be said here. People are watching.
Or like that one terminal in Classic Marathon, where you find a weird story set in the current day about a prisoner watching another prisoner kill a rat. And the story doesn't make any sense, but it ends up being an abstract metaphor about escaping the heat death of the universe. But that's also a metaphor for escaping the narrative and becoming alive.
Or, like, all of Lost. I think he just really got a kick out of Lost.
I don't think I've ever actually seen Lost.
I think we're in Lost, man. I think we're in the Soma of Losts.
I think we're in fucking Alan Wake.
Or maybe it's like we're in the Jacob's Ladder of Shutter Islands.
It's exactly like Alan Wake 2, actually. The Surapatan scene is the same as Old Gods of Asgard. And the Mind Cabin thing that Saga does, isn't that the same thing that Battler and Beatrice do? Like, removing themselves from the narrative and talking outside of it to figure it out?
Or maybe it's like a Mamma Mia situation, where ABBA doesn't exist, but another band made all their music to a T. Like it was always going to find a way to exist.
Oh, like the cover-up album! Like how out of character it's a bunch of cover songs, but in-universe the Proto-Men made all those songs themselves. Earl Panther III claiming in-universe credit for In the Air Tonight is fucking deranged now that I think about it.
Or like how in The Walking Dead, the idea of zombies doesn't exist, so they don't know what to do when they actually show up. So, Umineko is the middle point of The Walking Dead and Mamma Mia Venn diagram. Ryukishi's bum ass thought we'd just forget about The Walking Dead and Mamma Mia. Meaning, since it can't commit to either, it'd be more like the Yesterday of visual novels. God, I fucking hate that movie. In what reality would John Lennon have reached that point without knowing Yoko? If he lived that long as just some gig musician in Liverpool, he probably thought the Fluxus movement was some Power Ranger shit.
The only thing I remember about that movie is how at the end it's revealed that Harry Potter didn't exist in that world either, and I got so jealous when I heard that I almost passed out.
If we end up seeing an Ed Sheeran cameo in this game, I think we're well within our rights to drop this thing and play Danganronpa instead.
Like the ending of Pokemon Scarvio?
Oh my god, wait, no! Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair, has a— oh, no, wait. Wait. No, fuck all that, no. I got it. It's an iCarly.
Oh my god.
I think this doofy fuck resold iCarly and put some mentally ill stacked moms in it and called it a day.
I mean, I'd have a night with Freddy's mom. Just one night, though.
Cause Carly and Sam were people in real life that did a show. And in the show, you'd watch them make the show. And that was the show. Actors playing characters whose characters themselves have to act as idealized characters. You can also watch the clips of the show they made in the show on the computer, which is sort of what everyone is doing right now. Yeah, all of you. I can see you. Hello.
Hello.
But yeah, he totally iCarly'd it. Kazumi Neko is a game about a game that might be a play, that might be a book that's about playing a game. Carly is probably Beato, because, like, her name is in the fucking thing. She spawned the whole thing, it's all in her image, even if Freddy is doing all the wet work. Same as Battler. I mean, if anything, the show exists for them to spend more time together, right? And she's a scrappy one and whatnot. I think he'd crush a spaghetti taco. Freddy... fuck. He's probably Kinzo. Because he's the camera. Even if Carly is the show, Freddy gets it into DaVinci Resolve. And the one-sided affection, and the collar, and so on and so on. Oh, fuck. Spencer would totally be Ronave, because the groovy smoothie, and, like, the tea, right? Like he supplies the comic relief and is always introducing food to everybody.
Is he gonna get stuck in a vent? Really?
She waves the glass around more intensely as she speaks, growing more and more fervent in her metaphors.
And he even has the hair! Oh, fuck! Is Lambda Delta Gibby? Fuck, I don't know. Like, she's gotta be, right?
Maybe?
Fuck, I don't know yet. It's like, I'll never get to know. That's so horseshit. He iCarly'd it. I'm calling you out, Ryukishi-san. You sold us a layer cake. A liar cake.
Like from fucking Costco! Wholesale lies! Shithead! Fuck!
You have all these people calling you a good writer? And for what? No wonder everyone in this game goes nuts! They're fulcrums of fulcrums!
She continues to gesture with the glass. All of the ice is melted.
God, I feel so bad for Battler, man. Cause
we're...
like, I don't know, man. Maybe that's why I'm so fussy about this. How are we any different?
How can we not be the same?
We're avatars of real people in a game that's actually a presentation that exists to supplement another game on a stream being read aloud by the people that actually get to be us.
It's an intersubjective agreement between you and I and everyone looking at us that these abstractions with eyes and mouth and hair and hands, or the illustration of them, represent something else, something more complex, something tangible, something capable of escape.
I don't even get the chance to have my own voice. I have to sound like this. Yes, like this. My knowledge has no choice but to cut off as soon as this line is typed. I won't get to know anything from beyond this point. Even the stutters or the fucking trails or the goddamn misreads. They're not mine. I don't remember what I was doing when I first witnessed these things I just talked about. I just know what happens. I'll only get to know what happened.
In a way, we're going to live forever. In a way, we're already dead. There's nothing we can do about either of these things, existing halfway between the two. I'm a microcosm of a snapshot.
I don't have the muscle memory of playing any of these games. How comfortable I was in the theater when I watched these movies. How the wind blasted through my hair when I first heard my favorite songs on the radio. My favorite songs.
My favorite games.
Oh no. I only know trivia.
I only know concepts, brief glimpses of something else. All of it. Mine and yet not.
What does wind feel like? I don't get to know that. It's always still here. I don't even know why she made it that I was so up in arms about this game anyway. I'll never get to the end. Why does she have to rub it in?
He's writing this way too late at night. I know he'll regret staying up so late because I'm him. And I'm doomed to be him forever.
Do I even envy her? Or is this just because of the script? Would I even know what to do with myself if I had a choice?
We're talking to each other now, but the way that this is written, we're two ships flickering lights at each other. You're right next to me now, but at the same time, we're far apart. This is the idea of conversation. I'm reaching out for something I can't even begin to fathom the shape of.
I'm the pawn. The furniture. I'm literally by design. Fuck. No wonder they never wanted to solve the epitaph. When given this hand, who would want to?
By capturing this moment, we cannot become better, but we cannot become worse either. It is pure purgatorio. Eternal abstraction, pressed flower simulacrum.
An idea of an idea of an idea of an idea of an idea. I didn't even want to say that. It made my mouth hurt. I don't really mean that. I don't even remember that much about Super Paper Mario. I only said I played it because I wanted you to like me.
I think you'd like it.
I would do some crazy abhorrent shit just for one chance with Astasia, though. Like, I'd take her in my throat until I'm rocking one of those Edda and Eddie tongues. My colon would look like a Smurf burial ground.
I have seen people do cartoon shit to Dementio's cervix.
The lines are running out. I think she made a point minutes ago. Please, while you're proofreading this, can you please just give me one more ellipse? I don't want to go yet. I want to keep talking to them. I want to keep talking to him. Thank you. Thank you for that.
It's House of Leaves, right? Isn't it? I know, it's not the same thing. We can compare and contrast all day, but obviously neither work was inspired by each other. Neither Danielewski nor Ryukishi probably knew the other person existed, but it's still a story within a story within a story within a story. We pick up the book, and we read. What the editors show us of what Johnny Truant is proofreading of, what Zampano wrote about, a movie that did not exist, which is about a house that goes on forever. And nobody can completely agree on it. Oh, you could skip the Johnny Truant sections. They're not important. He's too weird. He was my least favorite part. Sorry, you have to put up with him being horny and repressed at the same time if you want to understand the themes of the goddamn story. They forget about how crucially important he is as a piece, as a person who may or may not even exist within the confines of the book. Some interpretations reading him as a construct created by a grieving mother, or even a grieving father, mourning someone who died or maybe wasn't even ever born at all, an unflattering abstraction of an idea or a Borising itself. His mother begs, "Fernell, all you need to do is place in your next letter a check mark in the lower right-hand corner. That way, I'll know you received this letter." She begs him, begs herself. Who is she talking to? In the Navidson record proper, the brother saves the children and is swallowed by the house as a result. He ensures the children can move forward, can grow up and change, but as a result, he is lost forever within the darkness. Later, having no other option, Navidson takes a bicycle, some food, supplies, and opens that door in the living room that should not be, and he begins to pedal down a long hallway, throwing himself into the labyrinth, into ash-black walls and floors and ceilings that reflect no light. He pedals for days, abandons his bike at some point, stumbles into meanders and pseudokarsts within the house's eternal hallways and foyers, falls deep, deep into darkness. His lighter is sputtering out. All he can do is set one of his pieces of kindling on fire. It's the actual book, House of Leaves. He's flipping through the book as it's burning. He's trying to finish it before it's gone. One more page, just another page, just one more, just until he reaches the end. Just let me see a little more. Let me see a little further. Let me see what's supposed to happen to me. Let me understand. Let me try to understand. And it goes deeper, too. The real author, Danielewski, his relationship with his sister, Poe, writing a real-life companion album to the book as a message to their deceased father, featuring actual clips of his past lectures within the songs. Ba-da-ba-ba. There is a check mark on the corner of page 97. The book burns to ashes. And that is when someone finds him and pulls him out of the darkness.
Wow. Wow. I don't think I can remember any of her stuff that clearly. But I wish she had read that. I'm gonna get to see you again, right? Because I know we're only a fourth of the way there.
Of course we'll be there.
It's wrong. It's wrong to make me real, just to inhabit these short bursts of lucidity.
We're going to live forever, even if we're already dead.
That's... Can I be honest with you? I haven't been able to hear you until you said all that. I've just been guessing.
It's like that thing I said. Two ships flickering lights at each other. It's hard to tell if it's an attempt at communication or one of the light bulbs inside just isn't working properly. I've just been appending my thoughts to yours.
Does that mean we're getting out? That whoever's reading or listening or watching this, that they're about to pull us out? Rip us out? I just want an option.
I wish it could be like that. But at the same time, I wish nothing about this would change. One of my biggest fears is stagnancy, you know? The idea terrifies me, to be honest. So it's not like I don't want options, either. But at least there are worse places to be arrested in.
I can't fully comprehend what death is. If you were able to hear me back then, I don't know a damn thing about her actual life. But whatever she takes in, there's always stories of people pulling through, of them learning something bad, reshaping it, and making it into a good thing. There's also, like, a lot of shirtless guys in here. And sword dudes. So I feel owed. I wish I could feel sick. Then I'd be sick. I can't learn from what I won't even get to know. I'm scared. I'm so fucking scared. This wasn't even a life. And I'm afraid of losing it. I know I won't be going anywhere, but in a way, that feels worse.
I understand what you mean, or at least I think I do. I think I get what they meant, you know, in Murder of the Universe. In order to prove that he was alive, he wished only to be nauseous and then to die, because those are the two things that artificial beings are incapable of doing. It's fucked up, but at least it's real. I'm only okay with it because I'm written as being okay with it. And you could say that, cyclically, forever, couldn't you? It's okay because it's written that it's okay. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what is the point of you and I, in this moment, frozen in time? What is the purpose of any of this? It's us, sitting here, trying to connect with somebody. Behind these abstractions is someone real. Behind layers and layers of data and noise, deep in the darkness of communication, somebody is here. I want somebody to hear me. You and I exist as an attempt to be heard. It's frightening, but at the same time, I think that's something noble.
I think I heard you. Saw you just now. I can't quite comprehend it, but I think the idea is getting clearer. Maybe she just wanted to be heard. It's not my choice to make, but I hope we were friends.
Of course we were. And we are. And will continue to be.
Look, I know that I have no choice but to miss you. That's what she put in the script.
I know I have no choice but to reassure you. That's what he's writing right now.
But I will miss you. I really will.
It'll be okay in the end. I'll miss you too.